I'm Helen.
I'm Miss Sinclair.
And I'm Edison. Y'all better grab your extra large popcorn. We are in the thick of things with great films.
I am open and positive.
I don't like it.
Let's throw on these boxing gloves.
Let's do it.
Let's fucking do it.
Welcome to Talk Movie to Me, a weekly podcast where we do a deep dive on a new release that's just hit theaters or streaming. I'm Helen.
I'm Miss Sinclair. Oh, no.
And I'm Edison. And this week on Talk Movie to Me, we're heading once again, actually, into an underground fight club. Guys, how has this become our 2024
theme of season 7, apparently?
Yeah, it's the third one, in a row.
What? Okay, well, this fight club ain't in the Florida Keys. There's no Von Erichs, and there's no Tyler Durden. There is, however, a man in a beat-up, terrifying gorilla mask who's out for vengeance. Set in the gritty underbelly of Yatana, a fictional Mumbai-like city in India, this week's movie is Monkey Man, the directorial debut of Dev Patel, who not only directs but also co-wrote the screenplay and stars as Kid, a man haunted by a horrifying and tragic past. See, Kid's idyllic childhood in a remote Indian village was shattered by a ruthless spiritual leader named Baba Shakti. This greasy guru, who seems to have made his own Faustian bargain, a la Late Night with the Devil, a film from last week, sent his goons to seize the land, leaving a trail of death and destruction behind. Kid witnessed his own mother's brutal murder at the hands of corrupt police chief Rana Singh, and this trauma scarred him both physically and emotionally. Years later, Kid realizes that his path to inner peace ain't gonna be so peaceful. So he takes a job as a waiter in Queenie Kapoor's high-end brothel, one frequented by the very men who destroyed his life. Here is where he will enact his bloody revenge. On Kid's journey of retribution, he befriends a community of outcast warriors, the Hijras, who face persecution under Baba Shakti's growing political power. So Monkey Man isn't just about one man's rage. It's a story that grapples with complex issues of societal corruption and the fight for justice, and also of empowerment as Kid becomes a champion for the marginalized. Think Kill Bill meets Robin Hood with just a dash of spiritual awakening. Monkey Man asks the question, can vengeance and redemption be found in the sticky line between man and beast?
Mm-hmm.
First impression, Helen.
I was a bit apprehensive going into this, just knowing it's an action movie, and action is not really my favorite genre.
Yes.
But I was excited by Dev Patel and Jordan Peele's stamp of approval on it. And yeah, I was going to say it starts out the way that so many of the movies we've talked about this season have started out, but we already touched on that. So yeah, I went in apprehensive is what I'll say.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Doesn't surprise me at all. What about you, Sinclair?
Well, my first impressions for this film was really from the trailer. I loved the trailer for this. I saw it and I was like, that looks fucking great. Mm-hmm. I'm definitely going to watch that. So when I went to see it, it was a Saturday night. The theater was packed, and there was definitely an energy in the theater that felt very exciting. Everyone seemed to be kind of buzzed with knowing that a wild action film was about to start. And since this movie was originally just going to go to streaming, I knew that when I was in the theater watching it, I felt really happy that I was able to watch this in the theater. As soon as this started, I was like, the theater feels so alive right now and so fun and packed. I'm glad that I'm watching this on the big screen. Yes, I was really, really happy about that.
Well, I will say, so I went to the theater to see this last week, and there was a family with 2 young children watching this movie.
Oh.
Yeah, and it reminded me of, remember when we went to see
X? Yes.
So it was the exact same situation. One was an infant, but one was 7 years old. That child, this is traumatizing. Excuse me.
Yeah. It gets very gory too.
It was a little distracting throughout the film, to be honest. And at one point I did, the young baby was sort of crying, and I did turn around and I said, really? Really.
Oh.
Especially because like the film opens with this young kid. You know, maybe that's what they thought it was going for. So it's like, yeah, this mother telling her young son the legend of Hanuman, this boy who was punished for the gods for taking a bite out of the sun, which he mistakenly took for an especially bright mango.
Yeah.
And listen, any movie that opens with a story of legend like this pretty much already has me hooked. So
Yeah.
I just love this stuff. I was like in it at this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why don't we get into storytelling?
Yeah, in terms of storytelling, it does start off by giving us that legend of Hanuman. Basically, Hanuman is a deity in Hinduism. He is half man, half monkey, and he represents devotion and strength and faith. He was very devoted to Rama, who was a highly worshipped Hindu deity who was considered to be a supreme being. So Hanuman was very devoted to serving him. Monkey Man focuses on that one particular story at the beginning where, as Edison was saying, Hanuman was a child. He was born very hungry. He saw the sun. He thought it was a ripe fruit, and he tried to eat it. He leapt up into the sky. He tried to eat it. The god Indra then intervened. He struck Hanuman with a lightning bolt. He fell to the earth dead. The gods realized they made a mistake. They resuscitated him, and they in turn kind of gave him these powers that made him pretty much immortal. But he is featured in a lot of different stories. He goes on these different journeys. He is kind of questioning himself in some stories, trying to prove himself. He represents faith, and basically Dev Patel wanted to use this legend and put this all into an action film while also showing, these stories that he grew up with from his culture.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I watched an interview where he said that he just wanted to make the movie that he would have liked to see when he was, well, maybe not a kid when in terms of the violence, but seeing an action hero who looked like him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, totally. I think that was a really great jump off point for me. I love anything that's going to tie to like folklore or legend or things like this. And in general, I'll say I really did like this film. I think this film had a lot going on. It had that legend, yes, but it also was like a story about land grabbing. So it's like about gentrification and displacement. It's about the exploitation of the poor.
Yeah.
It's like a commentary on these class divides in our world.
The caste system.
Yes. It's about how spirituality becomes corrupt when it becomes bedfellows with politics. It's about revenge and seeking justice. It's about this man trying to find either salvation or damnation. There's even sort
it's
of like
about the horrors of the restaurant industry.
There's even like a lightly tossed in potential romance. There's a cute dog. Like, it's a lot.
Yeah.
And I think if this were set in North America world, which I'm super familiar, it may not have worked as much for me.
Yeah.
But because it was just so like bursting with Indian culture, it felt fresh and it felt captivating, and I was way more on board.
Yeah. For me, this is not the movie for me, but I appreciated what it was doing differently for this genre, and that kept me engaged. Like you said, if it had been set in, America and didn't have that culture to it and that mythology, I honestly probably would not watch this movie.
Right.
Because it's just not, action's not super interesting to me.
Yeah. I mean, and this does have, it has a standard story of revenge at its core, like most action films do. And what makes this film unique is seeing this side of that culture, whether it's tales of, Hindu deities, or it's being critical about politics in India. Just having the action genre as a way of entertainment, but also being able to do something with the genre that's important as well. Like most action films, they are pretty basic in their themes and
their formula.
So that really is what makes this stand out.
Well, it was exciting to leave the film and be like, oh, I've got stuff to research
Yeah.
here to talk
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, there's like a lot of cultural things that while you're watching this just probably went over our heads. They definitely went over my head too.
Yeah,
and
of
in
course.
terms of its look at like political systems in India and its criticism of leadership and of these systems, I can't really speak on that in
Right.
terms of critique. You know, that would have to come from somebody from that culture that's
Right.
experienced it, or somebody that has really studied the political systems in that culture. Like, I'm not going to go watch this film and be able to know if that is a good critique done by Dev Patel on these systems. Like, I
Right,
just
of
don't know.
course.
I can only take from it a broad understanding of what he's trying to say, really.
Well, interestingly, so when this first got announced, it was acquired by Netflix. And then when the movie was finished and they saw it, they said, no, we're not putting this on Netflix, partly because they were worried what Indian people would think of it and if it would
The
be
critique.
too controversial, I think, or too gritty, or just too it wasn't what they thought it was going to be, so they were trying to sell it to somebody else. And then Jordan Peele actually stepped in with his production company Monkey Paw, and they have a deal with Universal, and so he acquired it from Netflix, and then through Monkey Paw and Universal, they decided to distribute the movie.
I love that his company's called Monkey Paw.
I know.
Yeah,
that's
it is so
pretty
fitting.
cool.
Yeah.
It's hard to be a director and have something that you want to say and risk controversy when
Yeah.
you're trying to sell a film to a major
Yeah.
streaming
Yeah.
service.
But then, like,
Yeah.
to
You
stay
know?
true to your integrity, and he did, and Dev did do that with this movie.
Yeah.
And luckily it was able to get acquired again and distributed. And it did screen at South by Southwest recently, and it won the audience award there. So people are liking it. Yeah.
It came out of that festival with a lot of hype, and I think
Yeah.
it was just because it was again like a different take. We've seen these types of films before, but it was like a different take on it.
Yeah. Yeah, he does have a quote about his, choice to make this film more deep than a lot of action films. Dev felt that the action genre has been abused by the system. It's been kind of superficial and just about making money. And he has stated, a quick buck, mindless shit. I wanted to give it soul, real trauma, real pain. You guys deserve that. I wanted to infuse it with a little bit of culture. And he did that. So I think he was successful in that.
Yeah.
I think that this film is definitely like not the most cohesive in terms of its style and structure, and even the storytelling is a bit jumbled at points. It does feel like a new director that is really just being given this pile of paint colors and given this chance to just really experiment and try all the things that are going on in his head. It does feel like that.
Very much like, what color do you want?
Yeah, I want this color and this, and I'm going to try this abstract thing, and I'm going to try this thing and this thing and that. And I like the influence of this filmmaker, and I like the influence of this movie. Now, that didn't really bother me, to be honest. I kind of liked it because the movie does have such a frenetic energy. I didn't mind that, but you definitely can see where he's splashed in different influences in this film. He was really inspired by Korean cinema, by Bollywood. He loves films like Enter the Dragon. That was one that really influenced him to want to make an action film. The movie The Raid, which is just completely wild. I Saw the Devil and Old Boy are two other references. And I remember thinking about Old Boy when I watched this film, because I was thinking about revenge plots and how, in terms of plot, this is in no way even close to how elaborate the revenge plot of Old Boy is, but it still takes from that just completely unpredictable style. And yeah, you really see those influences in this film. I just don't think it's the most cohesive thing, but it didn't bother me. I kind of liked the ride of it.
Right. It's interesting that I did see an interview where he was talking about how like Korean cinema does revenge the best. And I was thinking about some Korean revenge movies that I've watched and how satisfying they are.
Yeah.
And that there was a little bit of that in this, but not completely. When we see what happens to his mother, it is a lot and it's hard to watch. And they actually took out, like there was a rape scene attached to that as well that they omitted.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah.
I know.
Would not have been
I'm so
necessary.
tired of seeing that too.
I know. I know.
I don't want to see it anymore.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I'm very glad that got taken out because as it stands, it's still hard to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it did feed my desire to see him succeed
Yeah.
in the film. And there is a cathartic feeling when all hell breaks loose at the end and he's like smashing that guy's face with the heel of a sparkly shoe. And that I was like, yeah, you go get him.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because with these types of films, there is always that critique of should violence be solved by more violence, and that
an
seems
eye for an eye.
eye for an eye, and that is the path that these characters go down a lot of the time. And I think that what balances that a little bit is the characters' like spiritual growth.
Yeah, and the motif of a hero embarking on a spiritual journey, that's something that we see in a lot of films, right?
Yeah.
It's often shown as the hero hiding out in this mystical place like a temple.
Right.
This is very common narrative device used in a ton of movies. And it's meant to show the protagonist's like inner transformation, their growth. And it serves as a catalyst for their development. It forces them to confront their fears, their doubts, their weaknesses, while also discovering their like true strength and purpose. We saw it in Batman Begins, for example, when Bruce Wayne goes to the League of Shadows Temple, or in Doctor Strange, or The Karate Kid, or The Last Samurai, or Kill Bill. I mean, it's literally like the list goes on and on.
Yeah.
And we do have that motif here in Monkey Man as well. And again, you're right. It's what sort of changes it from just being that eye for an eye, violence against violence thing, and is a little deeper, a little different. In this film, after Kid, that's the character's name, after his first failed attempt at vengeance, he's rescued by a trans woman named Alpha, played by Indian actor Vipin Sharma. And this is really cool.
Yeah.
Like, Alpha takes Kid back to this spiritual temple, and it's filled with people of India's Hijra community, which is officially recognized as a third gender, which encompasses anyone who's trans, non-binary, intersex, or uses other gender fluid identities. And I just thought this was exciting. This is like,
that was cool.
it's a huge step for inclusivity in action films.
Yeah.
Like, truly, how often do we see even like a single trans character portrayed as a warrior, let alone
Never.
and
Like I can't even think of an example.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Let alone the whole
you wouldn't
community.
even know that community necessarily exists in India too.
That was so exciting.
Yeah.
That's why I was like, I can't wait to learn about this, right? And in Monkey Man, they're not, like, the Hijra aren't relegated to the sidelines. They are allies. They're integral to our hero's journey. They fight alongside this protagonist.
Yeah.
They're strong. They're resilient. And the film also demonstrates compassion for the pain that they feel being shunned from society for being, as Alpha puts it, unsettling. And so I thought it was a portrayal that like breaks away from negative stereotypes, and it offered a window into this unique culture.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, for his part, Dev Patel said in an interview with Variety, quote, "This is an anthem for the underdog, the voiceless, the marginalized. Together they wage this war for the good and the just. And for me, I really want it to include the Hijra community. We should be fighting for each other, not against each other. For me, it has become rigid over time. When you look at the old carvings in these temples in India, the freedom, the sexuality, all of it, the philosophy was so ahead of its time. I wanted to dive into it and make that the lore of the film."
Ooh. I love that.
Me too. And I think, there's always discussions about filmmakers outside of a particular community, like telling that community's stories. But I felt like this film took a really positive approach to that representation. It was just exciting seeing them like kick ass.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. That sets this movie apart.
Agreed. Totally.
Yeah.
And the fights were great in this. All the fights. And the gore, what a delight.
This is your new quote, Sinclair. Anytime you can reference body horror, gore. Yeah. What a delight.
What a delight, honestly.
There was some wild gore.
Yes.
Especially in the last part of the film. There's that one sequence where he stabs a knife into a guy's throat and then pulls it out with his teeth.
Yeah.
Like,
that was crazy. I don't know that I've ever seen that bit where he grabbed it with his teeth. That was like wild.
Yeah. There were some rowdies in the theater when I saw this, and it was so funny because there are so many good moments of gore in this, and it's, this guy behind me was going, oh shit, oh, and then the whole theater would crack up at this guy's responses to what he was seeing on screen. It was just just a lot of fun, just a delight.
Yeah, totally. Why don't we jump into performances? There's a lot of supporting cast in this, of course, but really this is Dev Patel's passion project.
Yeah.
Writer, director, star. I love Dev Patel.
Yeah.
He's usually so like kind of charming and utilizes that part of his like personality.
Yeah.
This one wasn't so charming, but still had just all of that charisma. Like, I loved him in this.
Oh yeah, he's honestly just so handsome.
He is very ridiculous. Handsome. Yeah. Well, another interview I watched with him, he was saying that he didn't want to be an action hero who's like busting out of his shirt with muscles, because he's like, this guy also has to be believable as like a waiter. And
honestly, when he was working in that kitchen, I was like, he looks like a prince. Like he's just like the in that waiter outfit. Like this looks like a prince in a server's outfit. Like,
right?
He's almost too handsome.
He's very beautiful. Yeah.
But I do know what you mean, and Helen, about like he wasn't like a rippling. He's poor.
He's fit, but he's not like thick.
No.
Yeah, totally.
I think he's great in this.
Well, and it's believable that he could probably get his ass kicked too.
Yeah.
Like at the same time.
Well, and he was really giving it. Like he broke his hand. He he injured himself throughout the making of this film a bunch. And like the scene where they were doing the bathroom fighting, I read one quote where he was saying, like, there's people coming in their shoes and there's all this water on the floor, and he's like got his face on the floor and he's drinking this water, and it's like, that's just horrifying to think about. So the man was committed to the performance, and that is evident, because it's not just all of that, getting down all the action sequences and stuff, but it's his eyes. Like he there's so much happening there. You really believe this like life history, and it's a lot, because really we see in the flashbacks this character as a child in this one moment, and then we know literally nothing about that character's life up until the present, but something in his performance still shows us enough something that we can sense like there's a history. Yes,
and I think that because of that, I actually could have done without so many flashback scenes as a child, because I do think that his performance gives us enough where it's like you can just show that once. Like I felt they showed it too many times.
Yeah.
And I was like, I get it. I get what happened.
I will say, I think like broadly speaking, the film felt like too long for me by probably like a half hour. I feel like they could have got out, but I agree. He's able to carry it.
Because his performance really does tell the story itself in so many ways that it's just not needed.
Yeah, and that's the thing when you have such a gifted actor, is you get the backstory from the performance. You don't need it from being shown it or from exposition.
But see, that's interesting, because a different director may have seen that in him, or had been able to offer him that trust and grace, but he may not have felt comfortable offering himself that. Right?
Yeah. He was like, let's put another flashback scene in there just in case I'm not coming across here on camera. There's some interesting actors in this. There's Charlton Copley, who was the actor in District 9. Like as soon as he came on screen, I was like, District 9. But he also did Chappie, which Dev Patel was in as well. So they had some history history there. But he's just like very easy to pinpoint, this guy. He has like a very specific voice. But he's playing a sleazebag.
Yeah.
And he's having fun.
And
like,
so
he's
much fun,
chewing
yeah.
up that scenery, and you can just tell he's having so much fun as that like awful character.
Yeah.
Absolute pig dog of the worst kind, for sure.
Yeah, that horrible pig dog.
I want to say, and forgive me, anyone who's listening to this, but Savita, it's not Dua Lipa. I know it's not Dua Lipa, but it's Dua Lipa Pala. Anyway, the character who played Sita, the sort of love interest character, when she came on screen,
she's fucking gorgeous.
I literally was like, that may be the most beautiful human I have ever seen in my
Yeah.
life.
Stunning. Absolutely stunning.
Like, excuse me?
Yeah.
How does somebody look like that? I was
know.
astonished.
Yeah.
I know.
couldn't stop saying it.
I just stared at her face and like her lips and her eyes and everything. I was just like, you're so beautiful.
Insane.
Yeah.
Wow. How about technical?
Yeah. This film didn't have a large budget. It was supposed to shoot in India in 2020, and then COVID happened and they ended up being able to move it to Indonesia. But there was a point where cameras broke, and Dev shot some of this on his iPhone.
Wow.
Like, there's certain shots in this that were shot on an iPhone.
I have to say, it doesn't shock me.
Yeah.
No, you can definitely see the inconsistencies, but like I was mentioning before, kind of works. It didn't bother me at all. I was kind of here for it. I thought it was just a wild ride, but the camera work is all over the place in this. It's completely chaotic. Honestly, it has like gritty handheld moments. Then it will go to like a beautiful art house shot where they clearly had a steady cam or, had a more budget that day. It has these like wild psychedelic moments and like spiritual imagery that looks like it's from a 70s movie where a character is going through an acid trip. It looks like an iPhone in parts. It's just completely bonkers in terms of the camera work in this, but like I said, it kind of works somehow.
There is also a few shots that I think are really cool, like
breathtaking.
Some of the fight shots look like they're one take. Like there is one fight sequence in the bar that I was like, oh my God, this looks like one take. And you can see where they made the cuts, but like it was cool to watch it have that much action and still be followed on one camera for certain parts of it. That was cool. Yeah. I enjoyed watching it.
I will say like the absolute chaotic camera work in this, and it truly like chaotic is the only way I could describe it. I guess it worked. But I did feel like I was starting to get really exhausted by the close-ups. There was just so many close-ups. Everything was a close-up of a bike tire, a close-up of a wine glass, a close-up. Every single shot was like the frame of the face was like cut off the top half of the forehead and the bottom half of the chin. It was like it was all so close that I get it. Like you really feel like you're in it, but like we could have had a bit, like throw in a wide shot sometimes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was a lot, but it still did certainly contribute to the frenetic pace of the film.
And I mean, I don't know if you necessarily need your first directing piece to be something you've written in and you were also starring in. It's a lot to chew, So it would be cool to see him direct something that he's not starring in. Not to say he can't be in it, but like he's in like every shot. Almost.
Yeah, totally.
So
yeah. One thing I will say about the fight sequences that was interesting was I found the music in this film to be really interesting.
Yeah.
And there was one fight sequence, and I can't actually remember which one it was, but the music that was playing to it was like slow. I feel like it was like a slowed down version of "Don't You Want Somebody to Love" or something.
That was great.
That was cool.
It was so atypical and unexpected as a choice. That usually those sequences, especially when they're as like chaotically shot as this, are really like you need some like crashing music to it. But it was this like slowed version of that.
Yeah,
that was quirky, and I loved it. All right. Well, what is the last word on Monkey Man, Helen?
Yeah, I mean, this isn't a home run for me, but there is a lot about it that I appreciate. I appreciate the culture and the fact that he is just showcasing different communities and bringing in this Indian mythology that I think is just a very cool take, and I really appreciate that. And yeah, I would like to see him direct something else, but there was things about this that I can appreciate, but this ain't my genre.
Helen, you were
It ain't a movie
I
for
got
you.
a text from you, and you were like, am I gonna like Monkey Man? And I was like thinking, I mean, as
No.
much as you could like an action movie.
Yeah, you didn't respond, and I was like, that's not a good sign.
I was like, I'm just not gonna say anything. She's gonna
Yeah.
like it as much as she likes any action movie.
yeah.
What's the last word for you, Sinclair?
I had a great time watching this. I thought this was such a wild ride. It's an imperfect film, for sure. It's kind of all over the map, but I was here for it. I loved the audience reaction while I was watching this, and I think Dev Patel is great, and I am excited for him to direct another film. I think that this is a really interesting starting off point for him. A lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to echo basically most of that. I also thought definitely the crowd was really interesting while watching this film. Not so excited about the child who was watching it, but that's fine.
Yeah.
No, I really enjoyed this movie too. Yeah, there were parts of it that I was like, okay, it's not like my favorite and it's whatever, but I found it exciting, refreshing. I really, really, really loved the representation of the Hijra community. I loved learning that even existed.
Yeah.
And Dev Patel is like a leading man movie star.
Oh, for
he
sure.
carried this whole film essentially in like every scene and frame. Like he is totally captivating on screen, and I'll watch anything he's in, and I really, really, I like this a lot. I hope it makes money, and
Yeah. All right. Well, this has been another episode of Talk Movie to Me. If you would like to get in touch with us, our email is talkmovietome@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram @talkmovietome. Rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. And you can find season 7 episodes on YouTube at Talk Movie to Me Podcast. I'm Helen.
I'm Miss Sinclair.
I'm Edison. Thanks.